So I'm Ashley Smith, and I am at the Advanced Behavioral Health in Monroe, and I'm the clinic manager. And my colleague, co-presenter,
Mel, nice to meet all of you. I also work at Advantage at the Monroe Clinic, but I'm in the schools 3 days a week. So I'm out in the school system. So maybe I've seen some of you before.
Yep. So this is on the brochure, but the reason why we are here for this presentation, so we wanted you all to just gain a deeper understanding of the multiple impacts of COVID-19, how it shaped our thought process, the way we think, the way we are. And we know that the intersections of mental health and the school system are apparent. And this section will help to bridge the gap on ways that us as professionals, the teachers, the staff, janitors, everybody can really come together after this pandemic. So 3 objectives. So the first one, deeper understanding of the multiple impacts of COVID and the pandemic, identify the ways in which the pandemic has shaped our thought process using a cognitive behavior therapy lens, and then provide education and strategies to encourage speaking life and building a bridge to renewing the mind. So the statistics, Mel and I pulled these just last week, and this is from the CDC, and the numbers are still jarring. The total amount of cases, the total deaths, current hospitalizations, and it's still here, right? We're still experiencing this, and the impacts are great. And if you didn't lose somebody personally, you might know somebody that did, as I was sharing in the first session, my mom, she was a nurse, in Piedmont, Rockdale. And she contracted COVID and she lost her life, last year, and she was just beginning into that field, She was her second year. My mother raised me. She was a single parent. So she put made sure me and my sister got through, and then she was going to live her dreams finally, And but I know that she died loving what she did because she was such a nurturer. Like nursing was her, And when we had her ceremony, the things that her coworkers were saying, even in those short 2 years, I said, wow, that she fulfilled her life work, So the impacts of COVID-19. So economic hardship, notably widespread, increased job loss, rampant food insecurity, growing number of families facing eviction right here in Walton County, right? I work at the Community Mental Health Center, so we got the numbers coming in every day that are experiencing these things. Decreases in job opportunities, increases in cutbacks are disproportionately affecting people of color. Scholars estimate that post-pandemic society may see a 20% increase in people falling into extreme poverty. Life expectancy has also been estimated to decrease. And this article, Mitchell 2021, the full impact of COVID-19 may take decades to fully understand. So we have a couple word clouds here. I think it's the
yellow one. We got a little confused. We'll show both of them if we have both of them going.
Yeah.
So if you just want to take a picture of this, some of the people have little pieces of paper. It should be the yellow one, and then we'll show you what.
So when you think about the pandemic, what words come to mind?
Isolation.
Yeah.
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 Let me take it down. And
Did it reset? No. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
You're putting a lot of words in, huh? Oh, the other one. Okay, I'm going to start reading the words that y'all are putting up there, okay? So, when the pandemic comes in your head, we start thinking overwhelming, worry, fear, careful, loneliness, lost, sad, united, difficult, hard, death, tiredness, vaccine, sickness, changes, uncertain, mandates, anger, difficult, no access to resources, panic. All of these words start coming up when you think about the pandemic. So the next one asks us, what comes to mind when you think about COVID-19 and the school system?
If you want to use the blue one, you're absolutely welcome to. You can do this one as well on the screen. Sorry.
Did it come up? Okay. I'm going to start reading the words. COVID-19 in the school system, isolation, kids, resentment, sanitizer. Oh, yes. Everybody sanitize your hands, teachers, mandates, fights, hot water, alone, angry, death, jobless, mask. Oh, yeah. Everybody had to put on a mask. So, and it's hard to see facial expressions and what people are really, you can't read their face when it's covered. Loss of staff, tiredness, responsibility, germs, Again, short staff, burnout, responsibility, injustice, systemic failure, separation, changes, phobias, single parents. Yeah. So, of those two word clouds, what are some of the words that stuck out to you guys? Of the impact, what words come to mind just from COVID, and then the words that come to mind of COVID and being in the schools?
Fear.
Fear? Yeah. Anything else that stuck out to anybody?
Loss of motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, we didn't get a handbook for COVID, did we? Nobody had a play-by-play, you wanted to send me, you know? Yeah. And I think that was the hardest thing too, is like where is the handbook on, oh, when if a plague or pandemic comes, here's what you do. Follow these steps. We didn't have that. So here were some barriers to positive school climate. So prior to the pandemic, there were barriers to positive school climate. They were widespread, with inequity, especially prevalent for students of color. Before the pandemic, approximately 10% to 20% of children experienced mental health concerns, with the vast majority receiving those services in school. School mental health professionals, that's your school social workers, your psychologists, your counselors, your school nurses, varied degrees, education, and this may present a barrier to the ability to address those needs, those mental health needs. The pandemic may be exacerbating the prevalence of student mental health needs, especially considering the ongoing trends in job, food, and housing insecurity. So, I mean, kids can feel things. No, they're not directly paying bills, but if their mom or dad and they're in the house with them all the time, if they're struggling, they're going to feel the tension, even if the parents don't say it. They're feeling that. Um,
The Institute of Educational Sciences identified these strains on educators, with the first being the stunted behavioral and emotional behavior. When we isolated ourselves and our children and limited interactions for the last almost 3 years now, it's really had an impact on kids that are learning to socialize, that are learning how to behave in public, and that are learning how to relate with each other. So teachers are seeing some stunted behavioral and emotional health, the use of electronics, that again stifles that connection, those interactions. And then overnight, teachers had to learn to become technology specialists, right? Uploading everything to the computer, and parents had to learn how to work Zoom and
all these platforms.
Students had to learn how to do online work, and they can barely spell, but now they're trying to type. So that's definitely put a strain on our education system. Absenteeism became really chronic during the pandemic, and we're still seeing the rippling effect of that. It hasn't went away. The teacher shortage, so we have more non-teaching staff trying to teach or trying to be present and facilitate a learning environment. They're not qualified for this. They're just trying to fill some gaps. And then barriers to mental health services. Ashley and I see this every day. We have our waiting list. The mental health need wasn't necessarily caused by COVID, but it exacerbated it. It made everything bigger than what it was.
And I think from that too, like I was sharing in the last presentation, is we had so many counselors afraid to be in the field. I was working with mobile crisis, and I remember people telling me, hey, I got to leave because my son is medically fragile, and I'm trying to avoid catching this and bringing it home. And so the same thing at Advantage. I mean, we experienced a lot of loss with staff because they were afraid, and some of them had medically fragile children or parents that they were, taking care of that were medically fragile, and they just didn't want to risk exposing themselves to this virus. And we had a lot of counselors that moved home to work, that do telehealth, so a lot less in the community, doing the community mental health. So teacher stress and mental health. This one article talks about defining teacher stress as the experience by a teacher of unpleasant negative emotions such as anger, anxiety, tension, frustration, or depression resulting from some aspect of their work as a teacher. Heavy loads of teacher stress impact teacher illness. Teachers can face a range of physical and emotional symptoms from stress overload. Combating the burnout for the teachers. So, school environments play a huge role in teacher burnout. Richards reported that teachers with low levels of burnout, they experience affirmative school cultures with supportive administration and colleagues, as well as adequate resources and professional development. What I thought was interesting too in this article is they outlined how professional development for managing student behavior was not an effective intervention to improve teacher mental health. Organizational health is the best predictor of teacher stress levels and satisfaction. It is possible that the most effective route for promoting healthy outcomes for teachers is to promote a healthy work environment, including a positive organizational climate, high levels of collegiality among the teachers, adequate resources and support, and manageable workloads.
So some of the things that I'm seeing in the schools with the students that I work with, they typically fall into one of these three categories. And again, maybe COVID didn't cause anxiety, depression, or adjustment disorders, but it certainly exacerbated it, right? So even if they were already predisposed to have anxiety or depression, or maybe they had big adjustments going on at home, the weight of COVID just kind of amplified it. Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing a lot of anxiety over the amount of assigned work. Now that everything is online versus written, it's a lot for the students to do. Feeling behind because they don't understand the work. There was a significant lag, a learning loss that happened during COVID, but our expectations didn't change. Right. The standards didn't change, but our students, their focus did. Mm-hmm. And being overstimulated by the school environment. So when we're isolated, when we're limiting our social interactions for a significant amount of time, and then we put them back in the school system, right? They're overwhelmed by the amount of people in the class, the noise in the class, the people in the hallways, the noise in the cafeteria. All that is very overwhelming for them. Depression, sometimes it's grief, right? Not only over the loved ones that they may have lost, but over the way things were, or the way they expected things to be. Mm-hmm. They looked forward to their prom, their graduation, yes. Playing sports, and a lot of that was taken away during the pandemic. And because of that, they felt disconnected from their friends, disconnected from their teachers. Everything's through a screen, right? You don't have that connection, that interaction that we're wired for. And then adjustment disorders brought on by increased family stress, mm-hmm. disruption of their routines, and decreased opportunities for social interactions. I can't tell you how important social interaction is, yes. for children. And it's so much part of the educational environment. And we've limited that. And even now that things have returned to normal, it's still not quite the way that it was.
So this article talks about the parent stress too, as a result of the pandemic. So like I said, parents they're juggling, they were kind of like, okay, you're gonna be a teacher today, let's go. So these parents that they interviewed for this study, they just wanted to get their narrative of how things felt. And so one thing, a couple things that they shared was they felt overwhelmed juggling kids with different grade levels. Some parents have an elementary school student, a middle school child, a high school child, somebody still got a potty train, So there's multiple levels that they're in the home, and there are different educational needs for these kids in the home. Trying to learn the material themselves and worrying about the children's educational development. Like, I was like, did we learn this? Did I miss something? Like, oh my goodness, English is hard, learning these words and these sounds. And my son is looking at me like, Mom, make it make sense. Live, live, it's the same thing. I'm like, well, it's kind of not, what's the difference? I don't know. Let's YouTube it, impacts on the parents' work. So, suddenly you're transitioning, if you were able to, some jobs you had to do from home. And then, do you have two computers or do you have five computers? If you got four kids or five, because you need a computer for your job or you got to do and clock in. And some jobs were really rigid, like you're at home, but you still needed 100% focus with that job. So, I mean, it's really them trying to balance all those household duties and the social emotional impact. So there was anxiety, like I said, around contracting COVID-19. And they didn't want their children, in this study they talked about, they didn't want to make their children feel fearful, but they still had to tell them, like, this is why you're wearing a mask. And so they were trying to break it down, not to scare them, but really, like, this is what we have to do right now. Anxiety for themselves, those who had to still go out and work, again, the anxiety of, I don't want to bring this home to my kids. You're in the grocery store, somebody sneezes, you choke, you like cover your face, like scared to death. I mean, so it affected so much. And that struggle to find a balance between, I got to be there to support my child's educational needs, but then I need to have our family time too. Monday through Friday feels like a boot camp. Got this grade level, this school, this got assignment due. I got to clock in now. So it was a very stressful time. So as we're transitioning more into why we're here today, I love this quote: hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. So, not asking, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to us? Because I asked, like, Lord, why my mom? She just started. She just got in the door. And it's like, well, what is this trying to teach us? What is this trying to teach us? Because I still have her coworkers emailing me, thanking me for the spirit that your mom was such a great spirit. She really encouraged me to keep working, and with people coming in sick in this hospital, and I'm still getting messages from these people today. you know so here's the answer: we got to come together. you know we have to come together. It takes a village. It does. It takes a village. I'm born in Brooklyn, New York. On my block, it was still a village. you know like, I couldn't do anything. Miss Letha saw me, she was gonna tell my mom. you know nobody was in a silo. It was like everybody was coming together to make sure. The corner store, Mr. Poncho, he knew, hey, Ashley, what are you doing in here? Where's your mom? So it's like everybody was involved. And this is the concrete jungle now, this is Brooklyn. But everybody was still involved, and noticed you. So this article was just pretty much saying, this was about rural communities too. And it was sharing that they realized that they have to merge. Everything has to come together for the betterment of our community and our students, our teachers, our parents. Everybody has to come together and share. How can we help each other? So definition, I love definitions, because you came to this session, and this is the journey we're starting, right? To transformation and renewing of the mind. A journey is we're traveling through. We're gonna walk this. We're gonna walk this way now. We're gonna live in this now, right? We want to be transformed by renewing our mind. So transformation is we're changing our heart, our character, our disposition to be like new, to make extensive changes. Our mind is very complex. It feels, it perceives, it thinks, it reasons. So we're gonna merge into how do we do this? How do we move forward in this? And a revelation came. Mel and I were working on this presentation, and she shared something with me, and I said, I love that analogy. We have to share this.
Yes. So as we're building this new vocabulary of resiliency, recovery, and renewal, I really encourage you to connect that to something that's already inside of you, something that you already know, a concept that you're already familiar with. And for me, it's random, but F-16s. I used to work on aircraft, fighter aircraft, and we would get these. My job was to run through the last minute checks before the pilots took off. And sometimes they would get these warning lights, these faulty indicators, right? And how we would, the first thing that I'd ask them to do to get rid of them was to recycle power, which is turn off your electricity, rest, restart. If it was a faulty indicator, it would go away.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, that happened. So, what we can do when we're getting these warning signs, these faulty indicators, is just shut it off, rest, and then start again. It's already inside of you.
So that faulty indicators, this is the essence of speaking life, right? The faulty indicators, as Mel was talking about for her analogy, like I've never done anything with aircraft, but get on the plane to go to the city, Brooklyn, and so, but the faulty indicator speaks to those cognitive distortions or those negative thoughts that continually just keep popping in, popping in, popping in, popping in. And like she said, the turn off and the reset or the rest. We have to rest. Our body needs to rest. We have to pause. That's how we renew in our sleep. I quickly realized my body told me this past year, oh, you don't want to rest? Well, I'm going to make you. And some things happen health wise where I've got to go to sleep now. Right? Yeah. So a little bit on the brain as we move more into the topic. So when we're talking about children and adolescents, right? 5-year-olds, that you're seeing in school up into teenage years. Those of you probably already know, but the prefrontal cortex right here, the front part, that's where we make our decisions. That's our executive functioning, right? We display self-control from this place, follow multi-step directions from this place, even when interrupted, stay focused despite distractions, among others, and it's not fully mature until 25 years old. And it's a long time to be brain damaged, you know? Think back when you were in your teens, some of the decisions you made on your emotions. There was no thought behind this. I just did it because it felt right. This feels like what I should do. Okay. So cognitive behavior therapy. Aaron Beck was one of the founders of cognitive theories. Albert Ellis, he was a behavioral theorist. And Aaron Beck believed the people respond to their life events through a combination of your cognitive, your thoughts, your affective, emotions, motivational, and behavioral responses. So counselors will say, or we'll say CBT, we'll shorten it. This is a model that is based on this theories of explaining human behavior. The techniques used in CBT are aimed at correcting thinking errors to modify the core beliefs that promote these faulty conclusions or these warning signs. When you work with a mental health counselor, CBT helps you become more aware of your inaccurate or negative thinking so you can view challenging situations more clearly and respond to them in a more effective way. So I have quotes throughout this presentation. So a man thinketh, so is he. I think, therefore I am. Right? And think about the words that we come up with in the beginning of the presentation. Were any of those words very positive? Do we have a lot of positive words up there? No, 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 no. No, it's a lot of negative words, a lot of negative. So we need an outpouring right now. Our bodies, we're desperate for that right now. We need positivity. So the cognitive behavioral therapy triangle we use in therapy, we kind of put it up there so the kids can see, and my adults too. They enjoy it too, and those thoughts, how they connect with our feelings and behavior. I am worthless. So then I feel worthless. I feel sad. I feel angry. So then my behavior may look just like that. I'm angry everywhere I go, nasty attitude every time I talk to somebody, It's a product of what starts here. And I like this. I found this online because of, social media. And when I was in school, something bad might happen. Somebody talk about you, whatever. But it stayed at the school or your neighborhood. It wasn't viral, right? Yeah. Hey, it goes viral now. 2 million likes. And it seems like the worse it is, the more likes, it gets, So before you post, but before you even say anything, just think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If you got no's to all of that, you probably need to leave it alone, right? And then the next thing, recognizing and combating negative thinking. So when I first started as a counselor, I was working primarily with kids. A lot of them were in foster care. And I said, I need to get something concrete so they can see and understand what I'm talking about here. I don't need to break it down, And anybody ever have an ant bed? Yeah. Okay, so when you have an ant bed, you look at that one day, and you're like, I'll take care of that. You just get some fire ant killer, put it on there tomorrow. Yeah. The next day you come up there, is that the same ant bed? It's like it's growing exponentially, Then you got the cousins around the back, they building shop, auntie and uncle on the side of the house, they setting up, and it just spreads everywhere. So it's like automatic negative thoughts build every day. Every day. Every day. How do we combat this? How can we try to cancel and work against that? Positive, affirming thoughts. Just a pat. You can't step on an ant. I used to tell kids, you can't step on ants because they're so small, they're gonna go through, But if you do like that, pat, it's gonna kill it, ain't it? But positive, affirming thoughts. Start speaking positively to yourself. Start speaking positive to your colleagues. Start speaking positively to the kids, to the parents, and watch a shift or a change that comes over. I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. So here's some thinking mistakes, and I have this printed out for you to take if you would like. But these are some of the common thinking mistakes we see with our kids and our adolescents, and with adults too. And the main one that I think I see a lot is the black and white thinking. Two extremes, right? Is either you're perfect or you're a total failure, right? And so that mindset is going to put you in a real negative space because nobody's perfect. I hate to tell anybody who didn't realize this, but nobody is perfect. So you're going to have some imperfections. The catastrophizing, you exaggerate the likelihood that something bad will happen, or you exaggerate how bad it would be if it really did happen. So it's like a downward spiral. I explained it like the car garage. Have you been in a car garage? At the top, it's like the outside, and then when you're going down in that garage, the further you go down, it's like it gets darker. It's a downward spiral, negative. It looks like it's really black down there. And so I think that's what happens a lot of times. They get in that mindset, and there's one negative thought just piles on the other and piles on the other until they're in a real stuck, bad place. So like I said, I got that. So if you want to take it, you can.
And so just to kind of put into perspective on how our thoughts really influence our behaviors, our feelings, it takes 5 positive interactions to counteract or to balance one negative interaction. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a position as a teacher, as a parent, as an administrator, where you're always disciplining, then you're kind of feeding into those negative thoughts. Because students or people, colleagues, they need 5 positive interactions just to balance, not even to be neutral, not even to feel higher than or like they're doing a good job. So keep that in mind as we go through and talk about the power of words. One concept that I like to talk to my clients about is the concept of red thoughts and green thoughts. Most, even my students can identify that red thoughts are negative and green thoughts are more positive thoughts. And so red thoughts are those thinking mistakes, right? Those, I'm a failure, I can't do this. Whereas green thoughts are founded more in truth. So our red thoughts, they're not necessarily always true. In fact, most of the time they're not. Or even rational. You leap from one extreme to the other. So it's so important that we identify those red thoughts. Everybody should have a
index card.
Thank you for that word. I would like you or encourage you to maybe write down some red thoughts that you have.
Mm-hmm.
About ourselves or about?
It could be anything. It could be about work.
Home.
Okay, so as everybody starts to finish up, I would invite anybody that's comfortable sharing a red thought to do so. But if you're not, I have some examples. Anybody want to share?
I'll read mine.
Okay.
And so it was more of a statement, and it was because I lost my sister last year to COVID, and so my thought was there is no point to work hard or renovate. We were going to do some stuff in our house when you do not know what your expiration date is. So it's like you don't even know if you're going to even be here to enjoy it.
Right.
So what's the point? So that was that place I was in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And mine's similar to her. I lost my mom last February. So last April. So last February she fell sick, and then we lost her in April. And it just seems like everything was just tumbling like a big old like domino effect, a big old ball just rolling. And I was having such a rough year. I would always say it's never going to get better because it was just seemed like every time I pulled myself up out of the grief, then here comes some big life situation, and it just felt like
one thing after the next.
Yeah, I was happy to kiss 2022 goodbye.
It
was like,
yes,
so much for sharing.
I understand. Yeah.
I think mine has kind of been the past kind of 2 years, like feeling like I'm not making an impact on my job. That the work kind of feels like spinning wheels.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first step is acknowledging it, right? Is saying, I'm having this thought and separating yourself from it. You are not your thoughts. Just because you're having this thought doesn't make it truth. So that's the first step. So thank you for those of you that were able to identify and those that were able to share. And the second thing is presenting the evidence, right? I like to call it coming to a court of yourself. Right? What is the evidence? Okay, maybe for this case, I'm failing my students because they have not progressed. Well, instead of focusing on your students' progress, maybe ask yourself, what can I do to influence a more positive learning environment? Right? Maybe it's not all about the data. Maybe it's about instilling a love of learning so that when they're ready for the information, they know where to go. And, I'm a bad parent because my child doesn't behave well in school. I would argue to say you can't control your child's behavior ever, right? When you're there, maybe a little, but when they're out of your sight, not at all. So instead of asking, like, how do I control this behavior? What is my child trying to tell me with their behavior, right? I try to tell my clients anger is pain in disguise. So if you have a child that's consistently angry, ask them, what hurts? Is it, the loss of something? Is it feeling like you don't understand the work? Feeling inadequate, like you're not good enough? What is your behavior trying to tell me?
And encouragement. See, those things that you just shared, thank you all for sharing and writing those red thoughts down. But that's why we all need encouragement. That is our fuel that is going to sustain our hope during this. We need it from each other, from our families, but from our colleagues. You're at work how many hours a day? That's a large part of your life. I mean, I told the story about how it was when I was working in Atlanta, driving from out here. And I said that was 12 hours of my life every day for 5 days a week. That's a lot of time, And so it's necessary to have that encouragement at work, to have that support with your colleagues.
Okay, so to kind of illustrate the power of words, I have a little video, and you can kind of get a vibe of what it's going to say. We'll talk a little bit more about it afterwards.
What happened?
I don't know.
We can always Google it.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So as you can see, technology is not our strength. That's okay.
So this was 2 plants. IKEA did the experiment or help with it.
Nobody likes you. No one notices when you're in the mood. You're a mistake. You're useless. You're not even green. You look rotten. Are you really even alive? I like you the way you are. Seeing you blossom makes me happy. You're making a difference in the world. You are beautiful.
I brought them here to see the plant. I was like, a plant is getting covered. Like, it's not normal. I think it's an excellent project. To have something tangible that I can actually physically be a part of is, I think, going to be very powerful.
As the weeks passed, I started noticing that the one that was being bullied started kind of to droop.
While the plant that was being complimented, it was flourishing and beautiful. It's raised me profile massively of different forms of bullying and the effects that bullying can have on people.
If it affects a plant, it can definitely affect other people.
I just love her voice. So what do y'all think about that? Yeah. Is it so true?
Like you have like a positive
Mm-hmm.
work environment or a toxic work environment.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the fine print, but both plants were provided with the exact amount of
Same.
light, water.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same environment. Yeah. Just the talk, the words. The words. And we're like, what, 70% water? Just saying. You know? It's a little deep, you know. I go there sometimes, but you know, yeah.
Well, that's especially true for this next piece of research that I found about the power of words. They had this scientist, Japanese scientist, who did an experiment with water. He took purified water and contaminated water and saw that under a microscope, purified water has these pretty ice crystals, and contaminated water freezes solid like ice. But then he took that observation a step further and had purified water but attached words to it, to the containers. And again, they're both purified. The water that had affirmations crystallized, but the water that had negative words, do it, you fool, were hardened as if it were contaminated. So again, body's 70% water, our environment heavily influenced by our words. And so there's also a study at this school in Toronto that was for middle schoolers from grades 6 to 8, diverse group where they read a Harry Potter book and incorporated social emotional learning into the curriculum, talking about awareness for mental health conditions, coping skills, different things like that, CBT, how their thoughts influence their behavior and feelings. So it was over a 3-month period. They read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and how they determined whether or not the study was a success was whether students had improved confidence and compassion, which they did, but also some other themes came from the study. They had increased awareness, a better relationship with themselves and their system, sense of communities, and a better appreciation for teaching and learning. And there was some contributing factors to that. You know, the teaching and learning is less an introduction. They were excited. They had more buy-in and differentiated instruction. So it wasn't necessarily just them being talked at. They got to read, engage, and have group work with the material. The key findings were that, first of all, the attitude was a huge impact on student engagement. Whether the teacher or the facilitator came to the group engaged, excited, really shone through their teaching styles. Ongoing support increased the likelihood of students mastering the stress tolerance skills or those emotional regulation skills. So students that felt more supported were able to better regulate their emotions, even when the work was hard or even when they didn't understand. And then establishing a sense of community where peers could interact increased classroom cohesion and fostered trust. Students were more likely to share out, to engage with other students in an environment that really emphasized that sense of community, right? They weren't learning by themselves. They were reading, they were sharing, they were interacting. And students were more receptive to instructional material when teachers were comfortable with it. So the teachers that were familiar with the material, understood what their goals were with the lessons, had a greater impact on students' learning than teachers that weren't as familiar with it. And that one way they balanced academic demands was incorporating more class discussion versus assigned work. And this helped to manage student anxiety, increase engagement. So they were more involved with the learning material, right? Like, it's one thing to put it on paper, but then you have to speak upon it, right? You're definitely going to be prepared.
Okay, so again, I love the quotes, right? So the two most important days in your life: the day you are born and the day you find out why, right? What is your why? I can remember being in middle school, and at my middle school was they had a peer mediation program going on. So I became a peer counselor. I was going to help my peers get through these issues, And here I am now, a counselor, like in the field, And so it's like, I felt like, did I find out why that early? When I look back at my yearbook, and I was like, well, maybe I did. Maybe it chose me, Maybe the field chose me. But I wanted to share something with you guys because I still have these, my teachers, like I said, they were so positive to me. And these are from my high school. I still have my letters from my teachers in high school because they were, they cared, like they didn't put me in a statistic bubble. Again, my mom was 16 when she had me, no high school diploma, right? And these teachers believed in me. They said, Ashley, you can do this. There was a lot of things that I just felt like I could not, And one of the cards, Ms. Holder said, Dear Ashley, words cannot express how much you have meant to me this past year. You are a bright spot in my day. Your positive outlook, care for others, and beautiful smile will take you far in life. I will miss you, but please let me know how you are. I love you, Mrs. Holder. And this is a long time ago. I saved them. A long time ago, but I kept it because I'm like, I need to reflect back on this. When I'm feel like giving up, when I'm feeling like I can't push through, like I'm like, let me go to these teachers and see what they. Yeah, I did.
I spend most of my time out in the hallway.
Look, and then it was one professor even when in my bachelor's, again, first one to go to school, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I had no idea about college, the schedule. Oh, you can make your own. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'll get up, I'll set the class for 8. I don't do mornings. I still don't do morning. Why did I set the class for 8? I know I'm not gonna make it, but I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm late to class. I'm not showing up. So my GPA got so horrible. So he called me in the office. He said, Ashley, I'm gonna have to send you to another advisor. I said, why? He said, because you're on probation. I was like, what probation? I didn't do nothing. He's like, academic probation, Ashley. I said, oh my God. I just start crying. I was like, I'm the first one to go in my family. I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, just calm down. He's like, you can do this. He's like, you can. He was like, do you pray? Do you have a time where you just, reflect? And I was like, well, kind of, sort of. He's like, well, listen. He was like, I want you to figure out what's going to work for you. Do you go to the library and study? I'm like, yeah, but it's so quiet. He said, well, you can't do that then. maybe the library's too quiet. Maybe you need to be in your room with your music. He was like, music work for me. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try that because I love music, you know? And I did. And it was like the next semester, my GPA that semester was a 3.6. I had never seen a 3.6, you know? And I was like, oh my goodness. So I emailed him last year, September, and I said, Dr. Wiley, you won't believe this. I said, I graduated with my master's. I said, I'm in my PhD program now. I said, thank you for everything you did. He said, no, thank you. Thank you for believing in yourself. Thank you for pushing forward. He said, now you get to share it with somebody else. He said, I'm retired now, but these moments right here is why I did my work. That was my why. Yeah. Okay, so recommendations. So as the risk for student mental health needs are elevated, schools can contend societal changes by enhancing their support services as a buffer. So this article outlines some recommendations. So improving the school climate. Number one, words. Words, just positive words, speaking life, positive affirmations daily, focusing on behaviors you do want to see, positively reinforcing those behaviors, encouraging one another, enhancing your relationships, you know, as staff. As the study showed, even the teachers' attitudes impacted the students' engagement greatly, you know. Integrate the social emotional learning into the curriculum, understanding that play is work.
Yes, and so much of what our kids need is to play. How do we facilitate an environment where they can explore, where they can learn through interacting with one another? So let's not discount the recess. There's research that shows that recess shouldn't stop at fifth grade. It's significantly important for students even as they go through middle school, high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they need that interaction. They're craving that interaction. And you might not be able to change the whole school policy, right? But maybe you can create opportunities within the classroom to have conversation, to have group work, to let them engage
with each other. Providing more funding to employ school mental health professionals. Like, we just really need more mental health professionals at the school level. We just do, you know. We need more in the community, but I think it would be helpful to have them readily available in school, you know. Restorative practices versus punitive measures. Strive to understand what is happening in the home and how this affects them when they come into school with this, you know, the weight on their shoulders, you know. Value and incorporating the strengths of family and youth perspective across all domains. Increase attention to diversity, culture, race, gender, ability, and the intersectional influence of these identities and experiences. So that's really being culturally humble, right? Opening up the conversation to learn about your fellow colleague, their fellow classmate, opening that up.
So we threw out a pretty big word, restorative practices, right? You might be thinking, like, where do I even start?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have 3 ways that you can easily incorporate restorative practices into your home, into your workplace. And the first is active listening. I like to get down on my clients' levels, my students' levels, look them eye to eye, right? And mirror what they're saying. So if they're crying and they're upset about something, it's not, oh, you can do this, it's going to be okay. It's, I see that you're really upset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, acknowledge that hurt, validate those feelings, paraphrase back. So after they've told you the list of things that are upsetting or what's going on, you know, I start with, it sounds like, right? And then you can repeat that back to them. Sometimes you'll get it right, sometimes you won't. And then they'll clarify, well, no, that's not exactly it. It's more like this. But now you have that information, that conversation, and you guys can go from there. And then, of course, validating feelings. So much we want to do is to comfort and to minimize, because, like, oh, you should feel, don't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
No, but it is a worry. We can't take that away, but we can make them feel seen and make them feel heard. And so that brings to the affective communication, using I statements instead of the why don't you, you should, you need to. It's, you know, if a student's late for class, why aren't you on time? It's, I feel upset when you're not on time, because it takes away valuable instruction time, not only from you, which I know that you need to sit, listen to learn, but also your classmates, because now I'm starting class late, right? I care about you. I feel this way when you do this thing. So how do we show up on time? How do we get you more valuable instruction time, right? And then asking curiosity questions.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so much we know the list of things that need to be done in the day, right? And we know if we veer off that path, it might not get done. So much of what we do is sometimes barking orders. We need to do this, after that, this. But taking the time to say, hey, you seem a little off today. Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing? Encourage talking about feelings in a safe environment.
Yeah. So when you are frustrated, stop. Stop. Sit down, think, observe what's going on, and then plan. I'm a journal, paper, pencil girl, so I write it out, you know. In the morning when I wake up, like I have some time that I just reflect, what do I want this day to be like, Lord? you know, how do I want this to flow? I know I got these things to do, but you plan it out for me. I write my list of things. If I get them done, great. If I don't, tomorrow's another day. Because the work gonna always be there, right? Yeah, we can't let it kill us, right? No, it's gonna always be there,
Okay, so we actually buzzed through this.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh,
The end of
okay.
our presentation. We have lots of resources, references. If you want more information about one topic that we talked about over another, please come see us.
And this is one of my favorite quotes in Black History Month. We're in February. But Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. I told you, I got the proof. I'll never forget how they made me feel.
My best friend carved that in a walking stick for me.
Oh,
is that the best present?
That's powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love that quote.
Oh, I do, and that's what it's about right now. We saw the words, the negativity at the beginning of this presentation of all the negative energy that we have been pretty much sucked into. And then there were things before the pandemic, like some of the research showed. There were issues before. It just got magnified, and it's teaching us that we have got to get back to just speaking life and love. That's it, So I hope that y'all feel encouraged, Like I said, I got some of the worksheets. If y'all want the thinking mistakes, I have them up here. Any questions?